Welcome back to the Tundra, episode 4, presented by Nicolet Law. He's John Kuhn of the Packers Radio Network, Packers legend. I'm Matt Schneidman of The Athletic.
Legend.
Yeah, Athletic legend. I don't know about that. John, now I've been covering this team. This is my 7th season now. I didn't go season by season and look at every loss they've had, but right off the top of my head, yesterday's loss, as we record this on the night of Monday, September 22nd, that's got to be one of the worst losses of the Matt LaFleur era. Where do we even start with that?
Yeah. It's on the short list for sure. It's absolutely on the short list. And, when you go rolling into the fourth quarter and you're up 10-0, you think you're in pretty good hands. You think this thing is about set. I mean, the Packers defense has not allowed offensive touchdown in the first 3 quarters of any game. Not one. And they did it yet again yesterday. And then you found yourself late in the ballgame still. 10-0. Cleveland had a couple big runs out of Judkins. They're a really nice rookie running back. Got themselves down the field. Okay, down to the 1 yard line. It's going to be a game. Oh no, illegal chop block, back you up 15 yards. I knew we were holding them to a field goal at that moment. We held them to a field goal at that moment. And I thought to myself, they definitely aren't scoring a touchdown now. They're not going to drive again and score a touchdown. And then disaster happened with the interception. And I think, there's a combination of Matt LaFleur's decision to throw on 3rd and 3 instead of run some more clock off the time, or run some more time off the clock. Jordan's decision in throwing the slant. And I know exactly what Delpit was looking at when he was throwing it, because 3rd and short right now, early on in the season, Jordan loves hitting that slant. The slant or the quick out to Dontavian Wicks, that's his crutch right now. I understand that. The decision-making there, and then the debacle with the field goal block, and then the debacle with the field goal against, it was bad. It was a really bad 4 minutes of game time and about 20 minutes of actual time.
Let's start with the offense, because that's what ultimately lost them the game. Obviously, special teams was the last play, but the crux of the Packers' defeat 13-10 to the Browns yesterday in Cleveland was the offense's struggles. Number one, the Browns' defensive line is very good. Matt LaFleur said today during his Monday press conference that he probably underestimated the other guys, not named Myles Garrett, on the Browns' defensive line. He knew that D-line was good. They were the number 1 ranked run defense. Packers were number 2 coming into the game, albeit through only 2 weeks.
How good is that rookie Graham? He just made his rookie year on that game. People are now going to also game plan for him based off of that game alone.
Pressure percentage for the Browns. Let me throw a couple numbers at you. The Browns pressured Jordan Love on 14 of 31 dropbacks. That's a 45.2 pressure percentage. The number 1 team pressure percentage in the NFL last season was 41.7, also the Cleveland Browns. So they pressured Jordan Love on 45.2% of his dropbacks, aka they were pressuring the crap out of him. Jordan Love took 5 sacks yesterday, and it wasn't like he was running into them. He didn't have space back there. They were legitimate sacks. Only once prior in Jordan Love's career was he sacked 5 times. Week 4 in 2023, I believe it was a 34-20 loss to the Lions. Here's a really interesting stat. Through the first 2 weeks, according to Next Gen Stats, Jordan Love ranked 1st in the NFL in average depth of target. In other words, how far on average your passes travel downfield in the air, whether they're completed or not. His average depth of target through the first 2 weeks, 12.5 yards. Yesterday, 1.6. So far, as we record this before the Monday night game, that is the lowest average depth of target, 1.6 yards in the NFL. And one more thing, John, I wanted to get your thought on as I read this one out. Josh Jacobs entered week 3 facing the 5th highest percentage of stacked boxes against him in the NFL among all players. Basically, when teams load the box, put 8 or more guys in there to stop the run. Yesterday, or at least through the Sunday night game, or I should say through, the first however many games of week 3, including the Thursday night game, Josh Jacobs faced a stacked box on 68.8% of his runs, 2nd highest among running backs in week 3 with double-digit carries. And, I might as well add, only 3 out of those 14 Browns pressures came on blitzes. So all in all, a horrendous day for the Packers offense. They knew this Browns defense was good, but nothing went right for them. Very little did.
Do you want me to talk about any of those numbers?
I want you to tell me as someone who lined up in the backfield, how the Packers get their running game going and how they can get these other teams out of these stacked boxes?
Thank God that's the question you asked and not those numbers. You threw so many damn numbers at me. I
just want to give the people some numbers they can think about.
I'm glad you did. The air yards number is an interesting one considering he threw about a 35-yard pass to Matthew Golden in that game. So think about how many negative passes you got to throw to chip that one down to 1.7. But Josh Jacobs and this running game is something that they leaned on last year. They leaned on it heavily and early, and they built an identity. Listen, I thought they executed what they were trying to do yesterday at a winnable clip. I know he only averaged, 2.1 yards per carry or 1.9 or something like that, Josh Jacobs did, but they had 86 yards rushing in this football game. They held that. This is a defense that held the Baltimore Ravens and Derrick Henry to 47 yards rushing in their game. This is a very, very good defensive line. I think the offensive line, when it gets healthy and when it gets everybody in the positions that they want them to play in and want them to play long-term in, I think they will be better at establishing the run. Guess what? We got a Dallas Cowboys team coming up this week that their defense doesn't look too great. This might be a game where you can try and get healthy, especially in the run game. By the way, Kenny Clark got hurt in that football game against Chicago on Sunday. There's a chance he might not play this week. That would help out the Packers run game. So yeah, we matched up against a really good run defense on Sunday against the Browns. And, they got some work to do to get themselves back into that offensive line and run game that they looked like they had last year.
So a couple notes on that offensive line. Obviously, it was a disaster yesterday. Zach Tom goes out on the first snap. Tore his oblique in week 1, doesn't play week 2, practices in a limited capacity all 3 days of week 3, and then he plays, re-injures it on the first snap. I rewatched the play. Myles Garrett, and this is something to note, Myles Garrett predominantly, like not even a 70-30 split. Last year, Myles Garrett lined up over the left tackle 630 something times, somewhere in there. Over the right tackle, like 130. So basically, 6 out of every 7 snaps, Myles Garrett's over the left tackle. Entering week 3, Myles Garrett lined up over the left tackle 70-something times. Over the right tackle, I think 8 times. So the very first snap of the game, Myles Garrett lines up over the right tackle, which he rarely does. That was the Cleveland Browns saying, we're going to see how this oblique's doing, Zach Tom. And Myles Garrett gets a little bit of push on Zach Tom. Jordan Love gets the ball out quick, hits Matthew Golden on the other side for 8 yards. But then Zach Tom goes down. He's kicking the ground. He goes over to the bench, doesn't return, has his head in his hands, and he re-injures the oblique. So, John, you know this. You played for this team. And Brian Engel, Flea, and Nate Weir have been the 2 top trainers for this team for a long time. After I finish this, I want to get your thoughts on the job they do and maybe the notion that they are a historically conservative training staff. Matt LaFleur said after the game that we cannot let that happen in terms of letting Zach Tom play. And it was obviously, in hindsight, the wrong decision. Today, Matt LaFleur says, Zach Tom didn't suffer a setback. It's just one of those things where you can't simulate extensively in practice what the physicality, what a real game will look like. So there's only so much preparation and projection they can do during the week, in addition to incorporating player feedback about how they feel to make a decision on whether a player should play or not. So I don't know if it's necessarily an error in judgment to let him play. Clearly, in hindsight, it was. I think it's something where the process was good and the result simply wasn't. But like LaFleur said, even if they did everything right, that just can't happen. Zach Tom can't play one snap and say, I can't go. So what are your thoughts on the process to let him play? And then those 2 guys who are heavily involved in these decisions atop the training staff?
Well, it was the wrong move in hindsight because he only made 1 play. And Matt LaFleur even acknowledged that after the football game. I think about it like this. The Cleveland Browns went out there and Myles Garrett went out there. And I'm glad you saw that with your eye, Matt Schneidman, because that's the first thing I saw when they lined up for the very first play from scrimmage, the Green Bay Packers. When they lined up there and Myles Garrett walked to that right side. And I get the stats too before the game, 81% from the offense's left. I think it was 7% from the offense's right, 13% he lines up in the middle somewhere. I said, oh boy. He's going to come out guns a-blazing in this one. They figured we're either going to get a rookie right tackle in Belton, a second-year 4 or 5 games under his belt in Jordan Morgan, or we're going to get an injured Zach Tom, and we're going to shoot our biggest cannon right at them on the first drive. And he was only there for 2 or 3 plays. Then he went right back to his spot that he always rests at on the defense's right, the offense's left, and he played the rest of the game there. They had a mindset, they had a plan, and they just came out there and really took it to the Packers, starting with that first play on the defensive line. Now, as it goes for Zach Tom, yeah, you cannot go in there and play one play. And I'll tell you, Matt, I had a game where we played in Detroit, and I hurried myself back from a hamstring, and we were in pregame warmups, and I popped it. I actually fell down with nobody around me in pregame warmups. I tried to come out of a break, and I popped it. I fell down. I came in. I told the trainers I pulled it, and McCarthy looked at me, and he said, I need you to play. I can't get rid of all the packages. I need you to play. And I went out there and played, and I popped it about 4 or 5 more times.
Oh my God.
I'm not saying Zach Tom should have done that. I'm just saying that's when you only play one play, you limit everything that the offense had planned for a whole week going into that football game. Now, I foolishly went out there and said, you know what, Mike? Yeah, I am going to go out there. I am going to play because I was a fullback on a 1-year contract. Zach Tom has $50 million on a contract that he's got to fulfill too. So he's got a lot more to play for down the stretch. Now, when he gets hurt, I think it's the right move to take him out. He was definitely in a serious amount of pain. And I'd be surprised if he and Aaron Banks come back this week. But the offensive line needs to get healthy. And in the interim, the Packers need to find out who they want to play exactly where and for how long.
I think something else interesting that Matt LaFleur said in his Monday press conference today was that the Packers might be spreading Jordan Morgan too thin. And what he means by that is this is a guy who last year focused on right guard because that's where they thought he had the best chance to start. This year, he's playing a bunch of left tackle, is playing well there. While Rasheed Walker is down in preseason, then he's playing left guard. I think he played some right tackle yesterday. He's played 4 different positions in his 2 years here. And look, I get wanting to make sure your offensive linemen can play multiple positions. Elton Jenkins can do it. Tom can do it if need be. Sean Ryan can do it. Other guys in past years have done it. But Matt LaFleur was basically asked today, Jordan Morgan has said he wants to be a left tackle. Is there something to maybe, whether it's left tackle or somewhere else, letting him focus on one thing? And Matt LaFleur basically said there is some credence to that thought. It's something we'll have to talk about, is basically what he said. So they have some questions to answer on the offensive line, whether it's because Jordan Morgan's their first guy off the bench. He's probably going to start, who knows where, probably at left guard if Aaron Banks doesn't play. Matt LaFleur said that's a new groin injury for Banks. That wasn't a re-injury of the groin that he already injured this season, unlike Tom, who re-injured the same injury.
So he injured his other groin. So
Matt LaFleur said that it was not a re-injury for Aaron Banks. And groin was something he was on the injury report with.
Yes, earlier.
So my read on that was it was the other groin.
Wow. So he's down 2 groins. He's got 2 groins, and they don't just come back. Those things don't just pop back in a week or 2 weeks. He's going to be feeling that for the rest of the season. I'll say this as it pertains to Jordan Morgan. This man had a competition at right guard and left tackle during training camp. He had the competition with Sean Ryan at right guard, and he had the competition with Rasheed Walker at left tackle. Go to the regular season, and he's playing right tackle and a left guard because of emergency, because he has to, because he's the 6th man. And I understand what Matt LaFleur says. We need to find him a spot. We need to find him a home. But you want your best guys playing. You want your 6 best playing. And Belton right now in his career, you're going to have to play him at right tackle, right? You're going to have to throw him out there and deal with the learning pains with him at tackle while Zach Tom's out, especially if Jordan Morgan's there at guard, because you're not going to put Belton at guard. So that's the problem that they're in right now. I'm really interested in this. If they do give Jordan Morgan an opportunity to start at one position and one position only, and he spends all week working at that position, being left guard, and he goes out there and plays well, what happens when Banks does get healthy?
Champagne problems. That's a good problem to have, I guess. I don't know. What I want to ask you about, John, and Matt LaFleur, I don't want to say I was surprised about it, but it has to do with an offensive lineman, Rasheed Walker, who said last Wednesday, I believe it was, that he thought the Packers could go undefeated.
Loved it.
Okay. So Micah Parsons, who came into Penn State in the same recruiting class as Rasheed Walker, then said on Friday, maybe it wasn't the right thing to share with the public, with the people, but he said, I have no problem with him saying it. And then Micah said, sometimes they tell you to share your dreams in private because other people won't understand them. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the Packers go out and lose the first game they play after he says that. The Browns' social media account tweets out the screenshot of the video of Walker saying that. And today, Matt LaFleur doesn't take a shot at Rasheed Walker, but he made it very clear, and I'm pulling up the exact quote, he made it very clear that he did not necessarily approve of that, without saying Rasheed Walker's name, and he later, in a different question, addressed Walker. But Matt LaFleur said today, and I quote, "It pisses me off when we start talking about things outside of the next game, things that are way down the road. Worry about getting better each and every day." And then later, LaFleur said, "I think it's always a good reminder, like, hey guys, pump the brakes on everything. We're just trying to win one game at a time. And if you're thinking like that, or have your sights set on anything outside of that, I think you're focused on the wrong things." So a little bit of a reality check in multiple ways for the big talking Green Bay Packers. And it was funny. I don't know if funny is the right word, but I thought it was funny. Rob Demovsky goes up to Rasheed Walker in the locker room yesterday and asks him to talk. And Rasheed goes, "I'm never talking for the rest of the year." So I think he learned his lesson.
You know, there's poetic justice, there's karma, there's all those things that go with this. But to me, I want my players to have their personality. I want them to be them. And I think this locker room is a great locker room. I think they have the right mindset. I don't think they were feeling themselves in this football game. I didn't see anybody get any minuses because of loafs. I didn't see anybody not put the effort out there. Yeah, you need to lock into your details. Context is everything. And when Rasheed Walker said we could go undefeated, he was speaking on the Micah Parsons trade. That was about Micah Parsons coming to the Packers and him talking about the excitement. It was so excited we could go undefeated. He's not sitting there every day absorbing his mind with, we're going to go undefeated. We got to go undefeated. We got to go undefeated. He was locked into his playbook just like every other player was this past week. Did the offense get punched in the mouth? Yeah. Did the defense punch them in the mouth? Yeah. Should the Packers have won this game and should they still be undefeated? Yes. And everybody has points to blame. Everybody has a little bit of that finger pointing right back at them from this football game. I don't have a problem with players expressing themselves because I want them to be who they are. I want them to be able to have that confidence. And if you're going to walk the walk, or if you're going to talk the talk, you better walk the walk. The defense walked that thing. The defense walked that thing in this past game. The offense, unfortunately, did not.
I want to get your thoughts on this, John, as a former player. You know, Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love were both asked after the game about the locker room potentially, for lack of a better phrase, feeling themselves after the 2-0 start. You look at the result of that game yesterday, and a natural thought is, did they overlook the Browns? I'm not saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not saying players intentionally say, oh, we're great, the Browns stink, let's go in there and just plow through them. But is it correct to assume that whether intentional or not, maybe something seeps in the back of your mind about the hot start you get off to and who the Browns are on paper, and maybe it can subliminally affect the way you play? Or is that not correct entirely? And do these guys really just go at it on a week-to-week basis and look at every opponent the same? You tell me from your decade in the league.
Had the Packers gone out there and the Browns went up 10-0, and then the Packers battled back in the fourth quarter, and then the Browns kicked the field goal to beat them, I'd say, yeah, they overlooked the Browns. Look at how the Browns got the jump on them. They didn't think that, they thought they were just going to walk out on that field and steamroll them. Not the way this game played out. The way this game played out was, and I talked to both coaches at halftime. They anticipated that game. We anticipated that game. We said whatever the under was, bet it because it's hitting. Everybody knew that this game was going to be physical and every yard was going to have to be earned. And I thought the Packers did a great job of managing that game in the first half. And they get out of that thing with a win. It's a tremendously good, ugly victory. The last 3 minutes of that football game, they lost their composure. They lost their cool. And yeah, Matt, they lost it on the offensive side, which, is the hardest part for Matt LaFleur, I'm sure, to deal with here, because he could have easily had conceded to running the football, punting the football away, and letting the defense win that football game. Matt LaFleur, being an offensive-minded head coach, obviously wants to be aggressive and wants to attack the defense. And had they got that first down on that quick game, then they would have rolled it down under the 2-minute warning, and you'd feel great. You'd feel like we almost salted this thing away on the offensive side. Mm-hmm. He could have punted that day. Everybody's feeling their lumps today.
Just quickly before we get to Annie Agar here in our next segment, there have been a couple times over the years. I think back to the Raiders game in 2023, the Vikings game last year, the one at Lambeau, the Eagles game in the playoffs with Zach Bond, and yesterday, where Jordan Love throws an interception right to another guy's chest because he just doesn't see him. Now, I'm not asking you to remember each of those plays and tell me if there's a common theme, but from someone who played in the league, is there a common symptom for those plays? Is Jordan Love, not looking guys away with his eyes? Is he predetermining where he's going to throw the ball too much? I understand there was pressure in his face yesterday, so maybe he didn't have as much time to read everything, but do you see any commonalities in between those throws, and how concerning is it that they're still happening? Granted, some of those are going to happen. It's the NFL. But is there a level of concern that this is yet another interception that Jordan Love threw, not because he's taken a shot downfield and it's a 50-50, but because he simply doesn't see a guy and was fooled by the other defense? Again, that's going to happen, but your take, please.
My answer for you is not going to satiate you, but our producer Adam is going to love this. Football at the highest level is a very difficult game. Everything is moving at Mach speed, and until you look out one of those face masks and understand you didn't see this man coming, so he knocked your block off. You didn't see this guy coming, so he intercepted the pass. You didn't see this guy coming from behind, and he knocked the ball out of your hands with a fumble. This game is incredibly hard. It's incredibly difficult. And you do things sometimes that's outside your body, and you go back and think to yourself, why did I do that? How did I even think that was capable of being done? And quarterback is the hardest of any of the positions. Going into that football game, their first 35 starts, Aaron Rodgers, who is the greatest touchdown to interception ratio in the history of the NFL, has a almost identical touchdown to interception ratio as Jordan Love through his first 35 games. So Jordan Love doesn't see these things sometimes. Jordan Love gets caught sometimes by the game, and yet he's right there on pace with the greatest touchdown to interception ratio in the NFL. It just goes to show you that's how magnified the quarterback position is. And yes, that interception did lose the football game.
It did. All right, coming up, Annie Agar joins the show, and we get into 3 overreactions or underreactions, or just a fair statement in itself from that Packers 10, Browns 13 game yesterday. Stick with us. This is the Tundra, presented by Nicolet Law. This episode of the Tundra podcast is brought to you by Nicolet Law. Since 2007, Nicolet Law has been representing injured folks in Wisconsin.
And listen, you could be driving from a tailgate or trying to brave those highways during the snow. Accidents, they still happen. And when they do, you deserve a team that knows your story and your state. At Nicolet Law, they're more than attorneys. They're your neighbors. They're our neighbors, and they fight to get you back on your feet.
So if life takes an unexpected turn, call Nicolet Law at 1-855-NICOLET or visit nicoletlaw.com. That's 1-855-NICOLET or visit nicoletlaw.com. They're proud to stand up for the Midwest, one case at a time. All right, welcome back to the Tundra, presented by Nicolet Law. It's now time for Annie Agar. Now, we're coming off a Packers-Browns game, and we all saw your videos. It was a distressing afternoon for you, to say the least. Before we pressed record here, you said you had a fun fact that you wanted to save for the pod. It better be fun if we had to wait this long.
Well, it'll take a little pain away from the Packers loss because we'll talk about Dallas. The one team that is not on this sweatshirt, so I have a sweatshirt on, for those of you that can't see, with all the team logos on it. The one, and I've made sure I've counted and looked multiple times, is the Dallas Cowboys. And I swear it's because Jerry didn't get the 0.8% profit out of selling this sweatshirt. So he's like, no, you don't get my logo. Is that not hilarious?
Well, it's fitting for this week, obviously.
So fitting. Yeah.
That is a fun fact, John, isn't it?
I not that I'd want their logo on my sweatshirt.
So you got 31 other logos on there.
Yeah, all of them.
And you're wearing that today because...
Are a little hidden, though. There it is.
And you're wearing that today because...
Because, you know what, John? I don't have enough self-respect in my team after with the pathetic display of what happened on Sunday. So I'm repping everybody because screw that. I'm not going to give more licensing to my team. Wow. After that abysmal performance. Just kidding, guys. I love you so much. But it was bad. You guys saw from the videos. I was not enjoying myself. And you know what the worst thing about a Sunday loss, especially a late game Sunday loss, is I have to put out content still. So I'm like I missed the other games. I didn't even see the end of the Jets-Bucks game because I was in misery trying to get a TikTok out. Stupid. Hate that. Anyway.
It's the life of an influencer. It's a tough one.
You know, I shouldn't be complaining, but yes.
I mean, Matt had to talk to really pissed off players and coaches.
That is true. It could
I had
be worse.
to fly back on the plane with them. Annie, you had to post some videos of you pissed off. Okay, I get it.
That's true. Okay, way to put it in perspective.
It's a hard life we live. All right,
thankfully, I don't have to face them in person, so that's a good thing.
Oh, it's not that bad. All right, let's get into some overreactions or not. I'm going to throw out three statements at Annie. She's going to tell me if they are overreactions for the Packers or not. John can chime in too.
I was going to say, I'd like to get John's opinion of this.
Yes. The offensive line will screw the Packers when it matters most this year. Overreaction or not?
Before this game, I would have said that's not an overreaction. To preface this, by the way, I've seen every overreaction in the book on social media, particularly Twitter. From Jordan Love is like the worst thing ever, not winning MVP, to we might not make it to a Super Bowl, to we might not even make the playoffs. So everybody just calm down, first of all. When it comes to the O-line, when it matters the most, I think this might be a slight overreaction because the injuries are really bad, obviously. Zach Tom, Aaron Banks, not 100%. And Jordan Morgan is an absolute liability, okay? I'm just gonna throw that one out there because he's the one that was supposed to block the guy that blocked the kick, right? It just kept getting worse. First rounder, what are we doing? No, but I don't know. It's the Browns defense at the end of the day. They have, I don't want to overreact here, but probably the best defense in the NFL, clearly, if it made us look like that. So I don't think they'll sell us in the most important situation. Like I think if we're fully healthy, the O-line is manageable. But I would say that's a slight overreaction. What do you guys think?
Yeah, that's clearly an overreaction. We're not going to play the Browns in the playoffs, which is going to be when it matters most.
Good in the Super Bowl. That defense is pretty good.
Oh, they're making it to the Super Bowl now. Wouldn't that be something? They turned the whole season around with the Packers game, and now they make it to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be fantastic. I would actually love to see it. I'd love to get a rematch with the Browns. In fact, we get a rematch with the Browns, we're winning. I'm calling my shot right now. We're winning. Matt LaFleur is not throwing the football under 3 minutes left with a 7-point lead. Not going to happen. Won't happen. No, the offensive line is not going to let the Packers down when it matters most because that was a gnarly defensive line that we had to play in that football game. You talked about the pieces that moved around. Zach Tom probably should have rested this game. Matt LaFleur even relinquished that after the game, that it was probably a mistake to throw him out there because of that. Pieces were shuffled around mid-game. Never something that you want to do. And you know, the Philadelphia Eagles got a pretty good defensive line, so there's a chance this comes back to bite me in the butt. But I'm going to say, no, the offensive line will not, and the offensive line, which, by the way, carried us for portions of last year, will not be to our detriment in the biggest moment of the year.
Yeah, just very briefly, I think the offensive line is still a strength of this team. I think that Browns defensive line is arguably the best in the NFL, and the injuries obviously don't hurt. So we'll see what the deal is with Tom. LaFleur said today he didn't have a setback. So we'll see what the deal is with him and Banks going up against the Cowboys, who I think are 25th in pressure percentage, 27th in sack percentage. Now
I
it's
hope we just
Annie's line
feast.
of they could use someone like Micah Parsons.
Yeah, exactly. I hope we just annihilate the Cowboys.
It's possible.
Put
All
up
right,
70.
number 2. Rich Bisaccia should be on the hot seat if special team struggles continue. Overreaction or not?
This to me is not an overreaction whatsoever. Weren't people calling for his job in Vegas too? Like, this man, love him. I'm sure he's a great guy. I say this about everybody because I said the same thing about Joe Barry. Matt knows I called for Joe Barry's firing multiple times. But you have basically a mini bye. And this is what you have prepped. And it's not just the mistakes, it's the blatant penalties. I cannot take it. I think like 80% of his special teams plays result in a penalty, and the blocking was atrocious. So I'm totally for him being on the hot seat. I love him. I'm sure he's a great family guy. That might be where he's going, though, if this keeps going.
Oh, jeez. John?
Well, I think everybody deserves to be on the hot seat if they show consistent poor play, and that's what we got in this football game against the Cleveland Browns. It wasn't just that last field goal. It was the first field goal that they tried to kick in this football game that had immense pressure, and we talked about it after the game, several of us that were there. If you didn't think that field goal was going to be a tight one, that game winner, then you didn't watch the first field goal. And I would have thought that this Packers offensive line on the field goal team would have figured that out, would have been a little bit more firm. And, there were 5 kicks blocked around the NFL yesterday. It was a crazy, wild day. And it was just one of the ones that happened to hurt the Packers really bad. I don't think Rich Bisaccia deserves to be on the hot seat just yet, but if the special teams continues to do poor, which I don't think they will because he's that kind of guy that puts a solid boot in your ass, they need to perform better. We got a little thing called Rich Gosling's rankings, Matt, and I know you know where they sat on those the last 3-4 years. They need to improve on those numbers.
I'm in favor of keeping Rich Bisaccia because every press conference he's in a good mood. He starts off by asking me a question about the Yankees. We are the only 2 diehard Yankee fans.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, he once brought a Yankees t-shirt to a press conference straight from the Yankees clubhouse since he knows the manager and threw it to me in the front row. So I'm for keeping him. No, but in all seriousness, it's just the last 2 games really this year. But the reason I said if they continue is because, like John said, you can't have these long-lasting penalties, block kick, miss kick. And I think Packer fans are maybe a little jaded because of how special teams has hurt them. Going back to the 49ers divisional round game when they had the blocked punt with the days of Mo Drayton and Sean Menninga and Ron Zook, maybe even back in that role.
Yeah, I mean, can I just throw something out there real quick?
Absolutely.
I feel like the players need to do Rich Bisaccia some justice.
Sure.
Because I watch this man
thing.
coach. I listen to this man talk. He's inspiring.
Players love him.
And just they do. And show that love on the field. Make the plays. Don't get the holding. Do what he's coaching you to do. And special teams is tough. There's a lot of moving pieces. And a lot of times it's a lot of young guys. So I want them to do him some justice and make some big-time plays for him. It would be, if they made another change, Matt LaFleur's 4th special teams coordinator in, 7 years?
Yeah, not great.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
All right, number 3. A little light on a rainy day after a bad loss. The Packers have the best defense in the NFL. Overreaction or not?
Again, up until this game, which, I mean, some can argue this adds to the argument, but I would have said yeah because I was riding the Micah Parsons high for sure.
Okay.
I thought the Super Bowl defense. I don't want, like, it was a fluke game, so you can't really just go off this. But it was Joe Flacco, guys, and they scored 10 points in like 37 seconds. Not great for the defensive front, and I don't know if I would say, because we talked about like the Eagles. I don't think I'd say the best defense in the NFL right now. Broncos, really good defense. Yeah, I wouldn't say the best, though. I don't know. Would you guys?
But they are the best. They're number 1 in points scored against. They are the number 1 defense in the NFL.
Statistically.
They are the best defense in the NFL by points scored on them, and they played 2 pretty damn good offenses. And this past offense wouldn't have scored a touchdown on them if they didn't spot them the 3-yard line. This defense is a monster. This defense carried them through 3 games. They carried them through 3 games. They carried them this game. The offense let them down. And this defense is the best defense in the NFL, although the Browns.
Okay, back on the wagon.
The Browns might be right there with them.
Yeah, I think you can make a case they are. I don't think that's an overreaction. Like John said, they basically allowed, 3 points? I say they allowed 3 points yesterday because the touchdown they allowed, the Browns had to go 4 yards because the offense put the defense in a bad position.
Right.
And the 3 points they scored to win the game were because special teams put the defense in a bad position. The only drive you can really say was the defense's fault was the one where the Browns made it 10-3 and Judkins breaks those 2 runs. Mm-hmm. They miss a couple tackles and they scored 3 points on that drive. And there were a couple penalties there too. So it basically held the Browns to 3 points.
They did, but then they didn't. They carried them for the majority of that game, and then they practice game situation. Matt, they practice game situation every week. They practice game situations every single week. How many 2-minute drives have you watched? How many 2-minute drills have you watched just at training camp? You've watched hundreds.
Let's stay on track here.
Yes,
you just said they have the best defense, and now you're arguing with me.
I know you're arguing your own stance.
Because I just want to throw this one thing out. My only disappointment was that last drive. You have the Browns with no timeouts and about 30 seconds left. You cannot let them get in field goal range. And that last play, the execution of that last play with David Njoku over the middle, we were jumping off of him like we were trying to lift him up, like we were trying to get the ball spot. What are we doing? Lay down on your man. You've been taught it since high school. Lay down. Don't panic. Don't play outside yourself. Trust the rules. Lay on him. Slow the whole thing down. Get that clock to zeros. Go to overtime.
Well, that's what Micah said. I don't know if Matt tweeted out. Somebody did, but they asked him, and he was like, he apologized for everything. I'm like, dude, that wasn't you. You guys were the one that did something right.
Yeah, Micah said he takes more blame for the loss than anyone since they didn't bring him here to jump off sides.
Yeah, well.
What did he have? 2 or 3? 2 or 3 in that game?
2.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Those are our 3 overreactions. Annie has better things to do, like go edit a video that millions and millions of people will watch.
Overreactions.
Oh, I bet. Well, Annie, thanks again for joining us. We'll talk to you soon. Good luck with the rest of that video.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, Annie.
Bye.
Welcome back to the Tundra. This segment is brought to you by Potawatomi Sportsbook. Folks, it's football season. We all know how much you love betting on it, almost as much as we love watching it. And there's one sportsbook that's become the best in the Midwest, Potawatomi Sportsbook. It's the home of big wins, bold flavors, a bump in atmosphere, a big you-know-what screen, and more. Catch a game at the bar or reserve your spot in the middle of all the action for big events. In fact, you can bet on any sport, anytime. Bet above the rest at Potawatomi Sportsbook. Okay, John, it's a big week. I don't know, as a reporter, I don't know if you feel differently, if there was this much hype for Packers-Browns as there is Packers-Cowboys this week. Probably carry a little more hype if the Packers were 3-0, but Micah Parsons returns to Dallas, Arlington technically, nonetheless. Sunday Night Football. We're going to preview Packers-Cowboys a little bit. This is what you live for. You live to cover the big games. You live to be on the sideline talking to Larry McCarron and Wayne Larrivee for the big games. And the Packers, as we all know, have had their fair share of success at Jerry World over the years.
At the new stadium. Matt. They've never lost at the new stadium.
I thought you had more to say there. I thought you were going to talk about.
It's just funny because they've never lost at that stadium, even though it was opened in 2009.
Yeah.
They've never lost there. They've had great success there, whether it's Aaron Rodgers, whether it's Jordan Love, whether it's a divisional round game where the Cowboys were the 1 seed, whether it was a wild card round where the Cowboys were the 2 seed, whether Matt Flynn was the starting quarterback. The Packers have immense success down in Dallas, and Packers need to continue to have that immense success because could you imagine, we talked about that start of the schedule being the Lions and the Commanders, one team that was the number 1 seed in last year's playoffs, one team that went all the way to the NFC Championship game, going 2-0 against those 2 teams, and then losing your next 2 to the Browns and the Cowboys. That would be a fall from grace.
You love when I throw numbers at you, don't you, John Kuhn?
Lots of them, and in
Lots
bunches.
of them.
Give them to me.
Oh, we got a couple. The Cowboys defense is not very good, at least through the first 3 games. They are 30th in yards allowed per game, 31st in passing defense, 17th in rushing defense, so better, 28th in scoring defense, 25th in pressure percentage, and 27th in sack percentage. Quite the, apples and oranges, I couldn't think of the right phrase to use there, for the Packers offense to face, going from the Browns defense to the Cowboys defense. If there ever was a get-right game for that Packers offense that hasn't quite been kicking on all cylinders yet this season, even though they put up 27 points in the first 2 games, the defense was the story of those games. This would be the game for the Packers defense, or Packers offense, I should say, to get right. And you look at those pass rushing numbers, 25th in pressure percentage. I think I said these are all according to True Media, 27th in sack percentage. Boy, we said it with Annie. They could use a guy like Micah Parsons.
Yeah, and you said the apples and oranges between the Browns defense and the Cowboys defense. How about the apples and oranges between the Browns offense and the Cowboys offense? The Cowboys offense 3rd in the NFL in yardage, 10th in points. And, the one thing for going for the Packers, they might be without CeeDee Lamb because the Cowboys decided to line him up at running back and get him hurt
Most
in this
likely,
last football game.
Brian Schottenheimer said CeeDee Lamb is unlikely to play. Adam Schefter said it's I think 3 to 4 week injury is what Todd Archer, the Cowboys reporter for ESPN, said. And then Tyler Booker, their starting left guard, will also not play.
Yeah, so their starting left guard, their starting and best wide receiver, their best offensive weapon, and then Kenny Clark in the middle, the guy that they got to stop the run. So maybe the Packers will be able to really get that run game going this week. I cannot confirm Kenny Clark won't play in that game, but he did get hurt in this last football game, so there's potential that he won't play. I think this is one of those games where the Packers need a little boot in the behind from Matt LaFleur, from Rich Bisaccia. Heck, Jeff Hafley, get after the defense as well. They haven't allowed a touchdown in the first 3 quarters of any game. Let's make it 4 in a row. In fact, don't let them score a touchdown in this game whatsoever. I'd love to see the Packers go out there and have a dominating performance that they're capable of doing against this Cowboys team, who is really reeling in this early stages of the football season.
Bounce back game, that term gets thrown around a lot, John. If the Packers ever needed one, it's right now. I think especially going into the bye week in week 5, you don't want to be sitting on an extra week with that taste of 2 straight losses in your mouth in games you should have won. So I think in terms of not only getting back in the win column, getting to 3-1, but having some good tape on film going into the bye week, and just it'll make you sleep better. As a player, when you went into the bye week on a loss versus a win, how different was it?
It's awful.
Because
it's terrible.
You can't get right back to it and scratch the slate clean and get right back to a win. You gotta let it simmer for a week.
It sucks losing on Thursday night, knowing that you got 10 days, you got 3 extra days. And if you lose on a bye week, you got a whole extra week. I will say this, if you believe that teams might feel themselves like you suggested earlier in the show, and that the Packers might have been, feeling themselves going into Cleveland, then yeah, you are recentered, you're refocused, you're re-energized, and usually you have a really good week of work after that. Now, if you're a team that goes in and loses a game, not because you're unfocused, not because you're feeling yourselves, just because you blow it, then you really have that energy to lock in to the next week, because you don't have anything to blame but the way that you executed late in that football game. I think the Packers are going to be so geared up, so energized. And the one thing that I actually do worry about a little bit in this game is they try and play too fast. They try and get it back in a hurry, right? Micah Parsons goes down there and he's playing with his hair on fire and maybe gets a late hit on somebody, or maybe gets a unsportsmanlike conduct or a personal foul, or God forbid he tweaks a soft tissue muscle because he's just trying to play too fast. Those are kind of my worries. Don't make this game too big just because you came off a loss that you shouldn't have had. And Micah Parsons, definitely don't make it too big because it's your former team. It's big, but play your game, because that's all it's going to take to be successful.
I'm a believer, and maybe this is simply because I'm a journalist, that the narrative will often win out. And there are two great narratives at stake here. It's either the crazy guy, Jerry Jones, shows that maybe he wasn't so crazy after all in dealing Micah Parsons, even though we all know he was, and the Cowboys beat the Packers and neutralized Micah. The more likely storyline is the Packers further expose Jerry as a guy who made this insane move to trade his best player, and Micah has a couple sacks, a bunch of pressures, and the Packers win to shove the Cowboys deeper, continue their dominance at AT&T Stadium, and give Jerry Jones another loss to the Packers at that stadium to ponder over. That's the more likely storyline. So forget everything on the field. That's why I'm picking the Packers in this game, is simply because that narrative makes more sense in terms of what is likely to happen. But you said it a little bit. Juices are going to be flowing a little extra for Micah Parsons. Now, what I'm interested in hearing from him this week is, and he may not be truthful in front of cameras, but deep down, John, do you think there's an extra motivation to prove Jerry wrong, or maybe more so to prove the Packers right? And, you've been part of some games where there were big returns. You were part of the, if I'm not mistaken, or was this before you got in the league, when Brett came back to Lambeau?
I was here.
Okay, so the juice in the stadium is just different then. I know you're not in Brett Favre's shoes, but when Aaron plays the Packers later this year, it's not at Lambeau, there's gonna be a bunch of extra juices flowing for Micah Parsons on Sunday night.
There is, and it's going to be high. In fact, I remember when I was down in New Orleans and the way that it felt, and I got injured 2 weeks before we came back to Lambeau Field, and I was bummed. I was bummed that I couldn't play at Lambeau Field as a visitor against the Packers. I thought that would have been great. That would have highlighted my final year in the NFL. But you know what I did do? I sat up in those meeting rooms and I gave every little tidbit that I knew about Aaron Rodgers, about our offense, and then Aaron Rodgers got hurt and didn't even get to play in the game. So I gave every note, every key, every bit of what to expect. I went as far as to tell our coaches, we got to put the right spikes on our players because we come from the South and in a dome, and if they try to wear moldeds, they're going to fall on their ass. And you know what? One person did try to wear moldeds in pregame, and he did fall on his ass in pregame. I went that far because I wanted to come back, and even though I wasn't playing in the game, I wanted to win the game. And it felt good getting a game ball from Sean Payton after that game because I helped game plan and I was a part of the process, and we came back into Lambeau and won. Mike is going to go down there, and yes, he's going to want to prove Jerry wrong. And yes, he's going to want to prove the Packers right. But more than anything, he's going to want to show out on that field that he showed out on for the first 4 years of his career.
All right, before we wrap up, let's get to score predictions. I think the Packers offense has a bit of a get-right game here. Cowboys defense, per those numbers I read off, not great. So I'm going to go Packers 30, Cowboys without CeeDee Lamb 21. 30-21 Green Bay on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, I think I really love our Packers defense matched up against our offense. Anytime you can get good pressure on Dak and make him get rid of the football before he wants to, Dak's a fine quarterback, a really good quarterback. But like any quarterback, you pressure him and you get helter-skelter. And I like our run defense. They got a little 1-2 punch down there in Dallas with Miles and Javonte. So. But I like our matchup there. I think this thing could end up being closer than we want because I'm not quite sure how our offense is going to respond. I think Jaden Reed, and until we get a full Matthew Golden experience, this offense could get a little sluggish here without our two starting offensive linemen. I'm going to call it 27. No, we scored 27 twice already. I'm not going with that number again. I'm going to say 26-20 Packers.
Okay, 30-21 and 26-20, but both John Kuhn and I think the Packers bounce back. Get to 3-1, entering the bye week. It's that time. It flies by, John, when you're having fun. Episode 4 of the Tundra. Packers-Cowboys. Find John on the radio call on the Packers Radio Network that game. My stuff will be on The Athletic all week. We appreciate you for listening. Catch you next week.